So on the She Matters thing, right? Because so I would imagine that in part of your story, from what I read before, is you had these early moments with refugee women. One was from Afghanistan, two were from Syria, and you just kind of get in the first part of it's emotional, right? You kind of moved by their story, like the situation that they're in. But then I would imagine, because you've worked with so many, female now employees that you've put into the workforce, that you've also started to realize like how much talent they actually have and how much they have to offer. So at a certain point, I would imagine that it changes totally away from the emotional, I feel for these people too. No, this just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that these people, don't have jobs.
Well, that actually started right off the bat, because the women who I initially met in The Hague in summer 2017, they were highly skilled, highly educated. One was a PhD in fuzzy logics. I'm the most educated you can get in the States. I went through all levels of university. I'm a Juris Doctor. I still don't know what that is, like what fuzzy logic was. And she tried to explain it to me. But the point is that she was, and still is, brilliant. But she was finding, she couldn't even get a job interview. And she had been in the Netherlands for about 2 years at that point. She was, volunteering everywhere she could. She was taking extra Dutch language courses, and she was not able to even get a job interview. The municipality was saying, you need to get a job, or we're going to cut off your social benefits. And she was saying to me, Christina, I'm not a proud woman. I will clean kitchens, because that's where they're telling me I need to get a job. But I was a published professor back in Syria. I traveled the world, and if you're telling me that that's all I'm good for now, how would that make you feel? And of course, I thought to myself, not very good. So it was really early on that I saw it was a combination of just, seeing these women, seeing myself in them, because I know how it feels personally to struggle and to want a better life for yourself and your family. But then also there's the whole, social injustice aspect of it, that this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, I totally understand, because I think, so in my early days of teaching English here in the Netherlands, I taught a lot of refugees, because it was kind of at the height of the, refugee crisis, as far as how many people were coming to Europe, just looking for somewhere to be safe. And you would hear all kinds of stories, that would make you think, what, really? People are, going through this? And there was this one girl, her name was Xena, and I remember because I used to always call her Xena Warrior Princess. and at the time, her English wasn't very strong, but you could just tell she was very smart, because the questions she would ask would, sometimes you show up to teach a course and you're not 100% there. Maybe you're lacking a little energy, something like that. And then somebody asks you a question, you're like, I really should have already explained that, that's my fault. But you can tell when people are sharp, when they kind of call you on that kind of stuff. And then, kind of forgot about her. It had been, I think, probably 3 years or something like that. And then I see her on LinkedIn, and she's giving a speech at some, like international congress kind of thing. I think this is I think the speech was released like right when the first lockdown happened. She had done it before. And there was just like hundreds of comments on there of people congratulating her and stuff like that. And I did the same thing, of course, told her how proud I was. But it was just like the thing that I realized back then, because, I have a much easier situation than any of those people do. But you start to really feel for the whole immigrant situation when you actually do it yourself. And then you realize, man, so many of these people have so much talent. They're just, because from my perspective, it was the language barrier. But just because they can't speak Dutch or English or whatever, they just don't get to apply these skills. And there weren't, at the time, a whole lot of people who cared,
So the thing is, because I love that story. I think that it's a beautiful story, and it sounds like she's heading places. So that's amazing, Xena. The thing is with me, I'm a fourth generation Mexican American, so I'm Latina. It's ingrained in me, and just the way I was raised, that even though I was American, I was fourth generation Mexican American. My dad was in the military for 18 years. Integration was still very, very huge for my family in America. So I have 4 siblings. My parents didn't teach us Spanish. They both spoke Spanish to each other, but they were like, my kids are American. They're not Mexican. And, that was really, for me growing up, like I saw, it still doesn't make sense sometimes, when I think about that. But at the same time, it's like, I get what they're saying is, because the color of our skin, my parents wanted us to have a better opportunity from what like they had or like their parents had. So our names are like Christina, Cindy, Joshua, they're not like Lupe and Maria, it's very, and again, it's like sometimes I was like, because that's language is part of your identity, right? But to sort of tie this into what I do here and the stories that I hear, I understand the value of someone trying to make it in a new country, and that will last generations, right? And so that is part of my life, and I think in America we're more, adept to understanding the value that immigrants have towards a new country, and that's for me was just kind of like, we're a melting pot in the States, but in the Netherlands, it was completely different. It still is completely different, and that's part of what I saw in 2017 when I met the women in The Hague. And I did research, and I found out that only 11% of newcomers were employed. You break that down even more for women, it's only 4%. And again, so it was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I again, coming from America, and I'm Latina, and, I see how hard my family worked, my grandparents worked for their children to have a better life. They're just hardworking. And then meeting the women here, they're talented, they're skilled, but they're unemployed. Very strange.
I think, it's also kind of a shame, though, because the same situation is going on in the United States. It's just different that maybe, like, one of the, I think, biggest misconceptions about Syrian refugees especially is that because somehow if you come from Syria and you're a refugee, you're supposedly poor. I mean, Syria was a very wealthy country before the Civil War,
Yes.
And so a lot of these people, I think,
Yes.
they have great education. They have, great backgrounds. Like they are very talented and very skilled. And I think that's probably the key difference from the economic refugees that, come to the United States, maybe from South America. And some of them are not only economic refugees, but you have like these terrible situations in Nicaragua and places where it's just so dangerous, I think, to even live. But at the same time, it's still somebody who has the spirit. They're willing to work. It's almost as if like people so there's this analogy about steroids, right? That everybody thinks like you can just magically inject yourself with steroids and then you get huge. They forget that you still have to lift a lot of really heavy weights, And I think one of these things that people often overlook when they talk about people taking jobs and stuff like that is people actually still have to work the jobs. People are still out in fields. They're in bathrooms. They're in kitchens like you talked about. And it's not easy. And these people are proving, so you might have been an undocumented worker for 15 years and you committed one crime, which was coming here illegally. But then for the rest of that time, you worked your ass off.